part of the point of why we do this is that Ryan and I are aspiring filmmakers, and next semester we have gotten the opportunity, without disclosing anything we can't disclose, to produce a independent short film that we have written. I don't think we can say there won't be any episodes. We might occasionally get, maybe like a fun episode in there, but it's going to be a break from a regular upload schedule, probably until the summer.
Yeah, that's the... Welcome back, finally, to Overtly Critical. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Corwin.
And today we are talking about...
Chapman Speaks. Wow, look at that. Isn't that fun? We did the whole the thing.
Who directed Chapman Speaks?
Two goobers. Ryan Smith and Corwin Stauff, whoever the heck they are.
Using the official Chapman Speaks DVD, the Blu-rays are still available online at this website that I'm going to put somewhere at the bottom of the screen. I can read the synopsis of the film before we get into our notes. Chapman Speaks, a personality news show hosted by Chester Chapman, climbs to number 1 in the ratings. 1 year later, the country is taken over by an authoritarian movement egged on by his show. Maya Little, an independent journalist wanted by the regime, urges Chapman to investigate a conspiracy behind their rise to power. Chapman ignores her plea, but as he faces increased censorship from President Richard Robinson, Chapman investigates his show's connection to the regime. The dark truths he uncovers forces him to reevaluate his blind patriotism and responsibility to his audience.
Where do we begin? Where do we go with that?
Whatever, 2.5 years ago, we stopped doing this because we figured we should make an actual film if we're talking crap about other people's films, I guess.
Yeah, and then you wrote like a 54-page script, and we somehow conned our advisor into letting us actually make it. And somehow we got it done.
Writing it, shooting it, editing, reshooting, re-editing, giving time for audio, marketing, film festivals, the whole fucking everything. So it was basically our life for 2 years. Anyway, it's the opening text of the movie, to start off right at the beginning. I think it does a good job of setting up a little bit of the humor and the tone of the film, if you want to read that.
This is a work of fiction. Any similarities to persons living or dead or actual events is entirely on purpose.
I think we're both big fans of black text on a screen before a movie. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we've even talked about films
White text.
Oh, well, yes. I think we've talked about a couple films that do that with exposition and stuff, and we're not people that hate that kind of shit. So,
I think it's simple and elegant.
I think it sets the tone of like, okay, this is kind of funny. Like, I don't know if you have anything else to say on that, because we also put that James Baldwin quote right after it.
It's a quote that my mom loves, and she's a civics teacher. The second quote by James Baldwin sums up what our intention was when making this, and kind of what the point of the movie is, which is really not to just dog on America and make fun of everything. It's really to look at something that we care about and try and make a plea.
Kind of with those two quotes in the beginning, which, they don't necessarily contradict, but it leaves it kind of up in the air. It's like, is this humorous? Is this like a topical thing? I really like that the opening section of Chapman's show, where it's him and it's the fan, doesn't really reveal itself to be a certain political slant. What I really like about it is I feel like someone who is a deep conservative who watches something like that could legitimately watch that opening section and could think it's like a Daily Wire movie.
What I really like about that scene is that we have the fan there. This reoccurring audience standing. He's not even really a character. We never really learn anything about him. We don't know his name. He doesn't have a name, played by the excellent Mike Hambrock, the head of the audio team. What that does is it immediately makes you think about Chapman's show as something that people are consuming. He literally is sipping out of a Chapman mug. Whereas I think if we didn't have that, it would be a little unclear. I don't know if it would really be weaker, but that's really what I think we gain out of having the fan there. It makes it clear that we're going to be discussing Chapman's show and the impact it has on people. I think it's a very strong opening. I'm very proud of that.
I just said I think the fan character also grounds the film, because we come back to him at multiple points. I mean, really, it's only once in the middle of the film, but then we come back at the end. And I think it's a nice character to like kind of humanize. I don't know if I'd say normal character in the film, but he's like the most average person in the movie, maybe other than like Tommy's family. In that scene, not only is it giving some kind of exposition as to the political state of the world, in a way that the mockumentary gets into more detail, but it also kind of reveals who Chapman's character is. You're seeing him in his profession, and I think it's a lot better way to introduce a character. And then obviously there's the cutaway to the picture of his dad, which sets up, a bigger thing to think about, and then that even ties into his monologue a little bit, where he goes a little indulgent about that. I think that the opening credit, I mean, obviously we know the behind the scenes of...
Are you eating a fucking banana?
I am eating a banana.
Okay.
I knew that idea was something I wanted to go for, but obviously the specific clip that I found from the Library of Congress was like just so random. I was like, oh, this is free to use. Let me just grab this. But it's like, it was so perfect. It was like the exact thing that I wanted. And what I loved so much about it is that it like gets into all the things that our film is about to talk about in terms of democracy and authoritarianism in the media, and like it just hits every beat so perfectly. And then even when it ends on that shot of like the censorship and everything, I was like, you cannot make that shit up.
You had like no knowledge of Fallout, and that opening is like right out of Fallout. That's like, it's a Fallout intro. And I don't remember if I had been thinking like I wanted something like that before you showed me that, or vice versa, but it was really funny. I said, this is great. It's like, have you seen Fallout? You're like, I don't know what that is. The show hadn't come out yet, but the games. I really like the opening of the film, which is fine, because I really have figured out that I really don't like the next part of the film, which is a mockumentary section, which is kind of a vestigial part of an older story concept, where it was going to be a little more mockumentary, like the entire film. I think it's just way too long. It's not interesting. It's just exposition, and it just brings the film to a crawl.
The idea of the mockumentary itself is cool. It is a unique idea, and I think even if people like it or don't like it, I think it's something that they might remember from the film. Even when we did the screening, I remember we got quite a few laughs out of the mockumentary, so I don't think it was for nothing. I just definitely think that it was a little bit out of our budget means, and I also think, it definitely kind of dragged.
I think my favorite moment in it is the sort of fake, I always forget the name of the fucking director. The kind of faux Ron Maxwell style of like Civil War movie. I love that. I love how that came out. I still hate that I wasn't able to be on set for that day, and that was the first thing we actually filmed. I still don't love, just to say what it is, the like 2 AI shots that are in there, or 3 AI shots, which that was, we shouldn't have done that. I don't like using AI at all. I think it's not really moral to use. If that ruins the movie for you, I'm sorry. But it was out of just desperation of we were trying to get done, and we couldn't use the placeholder stock footage we found. But I think it would have worked so much better if we had split that up over the entire film. I don't think our exposition is good or interesting enough to be dumped over the audience's head right at the beginning. It's not like Lord of the Rings where we can get away with that. And I really think I don't know if it really ruins the movie, because I can't accurately judge that, but I could totally see how someone would turn it off at that point and be bored.
Just remember, it's only about 5 minutes. It was 9 or 10 originally.
I think the weakest points in our movie are all exposition dumps. With that first scene between the censor and Chapman, that's such an interesting scene because we don't know who the censor is. We just see this guy Chapman, who we just saw as like this big figurehead on TV, and now he's brought down to earth. He's humbled by this guy who's towering over him and just saying, nope, you're going to do it this way. And it's such a great flip of expectations. When like Chapman's talking about Maya's blue hair in that scene, that's such a great little moment, because we immediately, in like one sentence, set up that they have a history, and now we're interested in Maya as a character.
Also, other exposition that I think we do well is Chapman behind the scenes looking at all the footage. Because not only does it tell us the pretty obvious plot point of like the writers of the show were clearly lying about the reality of what's happening, but we also plant the seeds of Tommy's mom in that scene. I do think that it probably would have worked better if the mockumentary was gone, but I do kind of like how the mockumentary ends so abruptly and it goes right into this dialogue. It's very jarring, and I do kind of like that about it.
I love that cut. I was the main editor for the movie, and I'm so proud of that cut.
This first scene of Chapman in his studio. Now, this scene is probably, I think it's still probably my favorite one that I wrote, especially just the way that it's kind of juxtaposed to the scene that comes after it, where we flash forward a year and see how things have changed. I like how like the bickering between Chapman and Janice. I like the camera movement that you have in there. I love the color palette that we were able to do at the studio, and that's another note. I'm pretty proud of the color palette that we were able to make throughout the whole film.
We wrote the script we did and made the movie we did, trying to do so within our constraints, which is, we had access to not exactly a professional TV studio, but a TV studio at the New England School of Communications. So, but we really wanted to dress that up to make it not look like the TV studio, and I think we did a good job of that. I think, especially in those wides, it helped us be able to do those wides, which is, I think, something the rest of the movie suffers from, of not having enough wide shots of the whole spaces that the characters are in. But, the hard red, white, and blue, your color grade on it just really brings out that kind of tritone color. And one of the things I'm most proud of with this movie is that, we split up the shooting kind of 50-50, roughly. I think if you don't know, I think it's really hard to tell.
We see Max. They're the same person in my head. We see Chester Chapman in 3 different ways, basically, within the first, 15 minutes. We see him on his show, and then we see him behind the scenes with, his boss, the censor. And then we see him a year ago with his crew, and it's like you see all these different attitudes that he has, and I think that's also on Max for his ability to kind of switch into those different mindsets
to sort of get off the glazing train, because I think that is a really strong scene overall. The dad photo on the teleprompter is dumb. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. I really don't even remember what our justification or explanation for that was, but it's never explained in the movie. Does Chapman have such big daddy issues that he has to look at his father's face every time he records? It also doesn't make sense. Why would he want to be looking at his dad when he clearly has, unresolved feelings there? If you've got any thoughts more about that.
I don't.
I think our directing could have been a bit better. I mean, I guess I'm saying your directing could have been a bit better, because on the scenes I shot, you directed. The lines that Janice has in the flashback are not delivered the best, but when I was watching that, especially compared to the next scene, I don't think it was an issue at all with Avery, who did a phenomenal job, I think, overall. I just think we didn't direct it super well.
I mean, to be quite honest, a lot of the directing problems with the movie just has to come down to the fact that we were, at all times basically doing a bunch of jobs at once, and just sometimes when you're on set, the priority is just read the fucking lines, please.
It kind of has this, and I think it's what Avery was going for, this wide-eyed optimism.
The film is very static overall, and for me, and I think you too, I think it was just, stylistically I am a lot more drawn to static shots sometimes, but this was a really big project, and for time reasons and stuff like that, it's just kind of the natural thing to just shoot everything static. It's just it's easier to think about. It's less moving parts. It's less people that you need. It's less intricate lighting setups, and a lot of the film is static because of that. But I do think, I think it does work for the most part, and I do think that it makes the times that there is camera movement stick out a lot more.
And it's not just static in the camera's locked down. The characters aren't doing enough in the frames, in the shots. It was also experience. This was our most ambitious thing we had tried, and we cared a lot more about completing the movie. We cared a lot more about telling the story, and I don't think we really had as good an understanding as we have now of how you use camera moves to tell a story.
My next note, and this is the one that made me laugh, all I wrote was, God, our movie drags in some places. I don't remember where this was. Probably the restaurant. But I don't...
Oh, man. There were a lot of things that could have been done better. Mainly getting more coverage, because we really gimped ourselves in the editing there. I think the one thing that really sticks out to me in that scene is like a little detail is the one cut to Chapman that we threw in because we wanted to splice takes of Maya. I don't remember what those takes were like, but I think if I went back in time in the editing room or if I re-edited this, I would just choose one of the performances and stick to it. Because I think that it's a lot less jarring overall to have a slightly weird performance than to have jarring edits. But yeah, that's another case of just like really boring ass exposition that we could have done better.
You know, we're introduced to Maya. And then, you know, Chapman kind of continues to push a little bit with Janice and the censor. And that's my second camera move, actually, is the scene when he confronts the censor in the room. I do some weird, like, whip thing.
That's one of the strongest scenes in the movie because it's tight. I mean, literally, it's shot tight, but it's quick, it's dramatic, it's engaging. It furthers the story of Chapman's getting more fed up and the censor is starting to push back against Chapman or, you know, push harder on Chapman. And I wish we had more scenes like that. And then the next scene with the president, when Janice says the president wants to speak with you, I love that delivery. I love Chapman's reaction to that. It totally sets up how the actual characters of the world see Robinson, whereas before all we get is this crafted image of him that we're being presented through Chapman's show, through the mockumentary. It's a great transition then into the shaving scene which I think that was totally just something you shot on the fly to cover like a continuity error with the beard. That's a great moment because it's showing that Chapman is so nervous to talk to the president that he wants to impress him. He's like shaving the beard.
Besides the fact that it's another scene that really suffers from not enough coverage, and I understand that now, what I did shoot I think looks really solid. I love how the lighting looks, and I love how I used lenses in certain ways to kind of compress things and lengthen things, and like I think we hide the space well enough. I mean, I love the opening shot. It's an 85mm silhouette shot. It's like I could believe in some context that that's like the Oval Office or something. Like, I don't know.
We threw in that establishing shot later of the federal building.
Oh yeah,
I've always liked that as the implication that maybe the White House got fucking burned down or something.
Right.
And they've had to move to a different like thing. I love like the two first shots of that scene, because the first one is so foreboding and great and it's interesting, and then we cut to this balanced shot where he walks up, it's bright, he's friendly, and they're evenly framed, and he's trying to be disarming, and then we get back into the like power dynamic there.
Me and you were so intentional with the lens choices on so many of on the entire thing. And I think that's a scene especially where I was putting so much thought into every shot. I was like, I want the opening to be compressed because I want it to hide the location. I want the shots of the dialogue to be super wide angle, so like you can feel like Robinson feels giant in the foreground and Chapman feels super small in the frame. Even the shots of Robinson are not an over the shoulder like Chapman's. It doesn't match it. It's just a POV, which is what I also did for the censor, because I wanted to feel like this foreboding, like we're in Chapman's perspective and stuff like that, and I was pretty happy with how that came out.
It was also another challenge we gave ourselves, was to shoot with prime lenses, because before that we had really only shot with zooms, and it was more motivated by the need to educate ourselves and to improve our craft. So a lot of those choices were us figuring out focal lengths, really, just figuring out how you shoot with a prime kit, how you tell stories with focal lengths. I think the Tommy scene, or rather the Gina scene, is another weak point of exposition. It's helped a lot by the flashback scene that we shot like months after we were supposed to be wrapped. That helps a lot with the scene, because originally that was an unbroken single, and it was painful. This was the first time I'd rewatched Chapman with that change to it, and immediately I was able to sit through that and watch it and absorb the information better.
I liked the red. It was something I saw in my head, and I was really glad that it kind of worked out. It has no motivation at all, but it just looks cool. And then I really like and it was something I added last minute to the script, I like the imagery of the two flags stacked on each other. The climax of that Tommy scene, which is kind of like the midpoint, is such a perfect moment for exactly that, of like, it's completely visual. Like, yeah, Chapman's old news feed is chattering in the background, but you're just seeing his gaze throughout the room, and you see him notice the flag and the kind of symbolism of like these darker beliefs hiding behind these acceptable, even surface level beliefs of like Confederacy and all that kind of shit. And then just add to that Chapman looking at his own flag on the ceiling. I just, like this darker version of himself. I really loved visually how that all came out.
It's a very surreal film. No, it's not. It's a very surreal scene. I want to turn his room into a 4chan board. It's a little cheesy. It's a little dumb. But I think in the moment it totally works. Because it just lets us see in this very big way, in a way that I don't think it would be as effective if he was just scrolling through a computer, the mind of an extremist that he helped create.
So I guess we could talk a little bit about the library scene if you want. I don't want to talk too much about it. It's horribly directed and not well thought out. Maya almost has her own little mockumentary montage of images, so it's like stylistically consistent with the beginning of the film at least. I do kind of like the second half of the scene where he's trying to convince her to stay. He kind of comes up with the kind of master plan of how he's going to basically fuck over Robinson and end the film. I know my girlfriend really liked that scene. I was like, really? Because I don't like it at all. But
the point of the first half of that scene is to basically give that alternative to the mockumentary's version of events. But it would have been better if we had shown that through Chapman interacting with the real world and not having someone give Chapman their version of events. It's a movie that's partially about how media distorts truth and how media is used to control opinion, but we don't get Chapman out enough in the real world seeing things. And we did have a scene that was supposed to be like a police brutality scene where Chapman intervenes, and we couldn't do that because of budget. There was no way it was going to happen.
Would have been a great scene.
But regardless of should've, would've, could've, it's still a weakness of the film, I think.
But I think after the library scene, he's got this like clear goal he's going for, and I think that kind of takes the rest of the... Ooh, I gotta be careful doing that. I think it takes the rest of the story through. The Freddy scene, I mean, obviously that's a very static scene as well, but I feel like there's enough going on in the space where it kind of works as this very restrictive thing. Like, oh no, Chapman's kind of trapped in this situation, so it kind of works, I guess.
That's actually fine. That's the one scene I wrote, which means, yes, I'll own this. I am responsible for the slurs in the movie, which I don't feel bad about, because that's how asshole supremacists talk. And I think that I feel like we toed the line well of not going overboard with that. It's suspenseful because you're never quite sure what Freddy's going to do. I wish he was moving around a little more, but we were so restricted in space there. I could have directed Freddy to appear more drunk, because when I wrote that was supposed to be kind of an important detail. Maybe we should have gotten just a close-up on the drink glass to emphasize it. That Freddy's drunk, and that's why this conversation is happening the way it's happening. If he wasn't drunk, this would not be happening at all.
I really like the editing of the rest of the film after that point. After he gives the Sensor 88, or whatever we called him, like the thumb drive, once the president comes out and Chapman starts his show, I love the rest of that pretty much. I think that...
And you saved that because the way I edited that was straight dog shit.
Well, it was just the specific moment of the gunshot that I had to... Oh, hi, Dan. Dan's just joined us. You can't see this.
Hi, Dan. We are recording, so So please mute yourself until we're done, my friend. He left.
I re-edited the section of specifically the moment where he's shot, but just even overall, I love bouncing back and forth between the president's speech and Chapman's final show. And then also there's a third layer to it, because we're also seeing the fan again, and he's actually doing something in this scene. He's getting up and finding his old American flag. A very rare moment in our movie where it actually feels big.
Yes. I thought I had rewatching this, is that the world feels too small. For the most part. And that is a great montage at the end. I love how the stuff with Gina burning everything came out, which was also cathartic just to burn all that awful shit that I had to print out and glue to boards.
I love how the ending shot of Chapman, he stares right into the lens. I think it's a great switch from the rest of the film where he's staring into this like compressed news camcorder. I love that it's just wide angle lens. The camera's, you're like sitting right in front of him as he's giving his speech, and the times he's pointing at the camera, it's very distorted because of the lens. I mean, it's basically us talking directly to the audience if there ever was a moment like that in the film.
Hello everyone, it's me and Ryan here with Overtly Critical Film Show. I'm back in black, and this is the audio section.
This is kind of interesting because not only did we make a film, Corwin and myself, but we also had all of you guys involved in it, and I would say you played a very significant role as part of the audio team.
So the audio post consisted of 8 members, 7 being myself along with the other students in my class, as well as the sound supervisor who was our capstone professor. I believe Mike had kind of reached out to Frank, kind of like, hey, you know, this graduating capstone class has a chance to work with your video students on this movie they're making that I've just now learned of. Why don't we take the audio for that? And I mean, and another portion being that the post program to our school was a bit new at the time, and the capstone class actually was different each year just because it's content. Like, there's no content's ever going to be the same.
Well, yeah, because they used to do the workshop traditionally, but that's like a 20-minute film, so that's totally different.
And this was, I believe, if I'm correct, the first full feature film that NESCOM has ever produced.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was a bit stressed when I was told that we were going to be working on an entire film's audio. In our case, we're students with schedules and classwork for other things, and balancing working on this and all the other stuff that I personally, and I'm sure all my other colleagues had to work with at once, is a bit hard and time consuming. I mean, and to be all honest, if I had more free time, I probably would have been willing to ask if I could have helped with production sound.
Definitely production sound was very inconsistent in the movie, because we never had one person tied to basically any role. And there were some days, like in the library scene, where there were 3 or 4 different people doing production sound because people had to come and go.
Sound effects and Foley and music are super simple to work with because we're not looking for like an audio cue, we're looking for a visual cue. Like, you know, oh, he throws a brick. Okay, well, I need brick sounds. Oh, well, it's an epic scene. Let's add music here. When it comes to dialogue, and this was a big part for the dialogue team, they had to take what they had and fix it up as well as they could.
We didn't do any ADR.
No,
right?
And that was surprising because I believe most films would normally have to do that just because production sound is not of high enough quality.
It's probably because also, I mean, a lot of the scenes you typically see ADR'd, other than if there was like a total disaster, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of scenes that are outside or with a lot of camera movement or environments where like the boom just didn't have an opportunity to get something great. I think just because our movie is so static and like is in such controlled environments, we had no excuse to not mic stuff.
For the final cut of the movie with the audio, the dialogue is probably the area that I have the most like points where I get distracted for some just areas that seem a little unfinished. But the dialogue team probably had the hardest job on your crew, on your department for this, because the movie is basically all just 2 people talking in a room. And also just with all of you guys, this was very monumental, because I think this is probably bigger in scope than any kind of capstone that the audio post at NESCOM, the audio post program at NESCOM has ever done.
It's not really a matter of like higher workload, it's just more to do. Like the quantity of work is higher. Like, yeah, maybe last year's class didn't have to do an hour film and theirs was only maybe like 20, but they still have to do pretty much the exact same stuff we had to do, which was, you know, work with dialogue, work with Foley, work with sound effects and music.
I'll say that when we sat there with Mike, or with the whole class, and we watched that cut of the film with audio, of which we had only really heard little, maybe bits and pieces from Dan, but I don't really think we had heard much. I remember my first reaction to that was like, oh my god, this basically saved our movie from being totally boring.
It was so good just to be able to hear and see the improvement that an actual dedicated team of audio professionals, aspiring audio professionals, seeing what they could do. They definitely fixed the movie you guys did. Saved, I would say, is a better term. What does stick out to me is music. Overall, very good. It's really just some scenes where I felt that... I remember we went back and forth with Mike on, do we put music over this, do we not put music over this? And you have to, when you're working with departments like this, you have to kind of let some things go. I think they were like happy that we had kind of said some things were like, no, we think no music there is better, and or this is out of place, and Mike was like, oh, come on. And it was really fun just having that kind of friendly bickering almost over certain things.
I remember that day, because like going into it I was super nervous, not because I thought they would have done a bad job, but I think maybe for two reasons. One, just because I'm always nervous watching my own stuff in front of people. And two, being like, well, this is basically going to make or break the film. Like, it's not going to get much better than this, so I hope it's good. But I do remember just being... having a couple scenes specifically that I was like, that is like night and day. The scene when Chapman comes in the studio and there's just like the voices going on, and there's that person that like greets Chapman. It's like, what's up, Chapman? Or I don't know who did that voice, but like, I think the audio does a good job at like making the spaces feel bigger, because there were some locations that we had that really physically aren't that big and we didn't have a lot of extras.
I think of the comparison between the old set scene, the flashback, and then the new set, where it's just this cacophony of voices to really reinforce what we were trying to get across there, which is Chapman feeling like overwhelmed with being out of control of his set.
The library scene, which is still a boring scene to me, but like the second half of that scene is totally carried by that like little rising music that comes under Chapman, like talking about like his plan that kind of leads into Act 3, and I was like, oh, that's like, it made that scene so much better. And then obviously Freddy's scene, just with that the fucking like metal coming from the basement or something like that. The scene didn't need to be elevated, but it was, and it just made it even better.
I was kind of approached by Mike at one point, and I was asked to somehow convince you both in secret to try and keep the library scene, because you both had come to him and were like, yeah, we want to delete the scene, it's boring, it doesn't say anything. So, and I went through with him and I watched it back, and the library scene really just gave a lot of context to the story being told, and I'm like, well, we can't remove this scene, this gives a lot of information the listeners need, I don't care if it's boring. And so,
you piece of shit.
And the best part is that when people watch the scene, they kind of just, they take in the music like it's natural. Yeah. Like, oh, it's rising, it's building. They're not being told that it's building. They're not being told to think it's interesting. They're doing that on their own, and that's from the music's help.
I remember when we handed the project over to the audio team, definitely feeling a little uncomfortable with, like, letting go control. And it was an important lesson in learning to do that. And it was important to do that because it made the movie better.
We're kind of like the third party helping. You know, we work with you, you work with us, and then you might hear our ideas and think they're crap. And that's fine. I believe it was in the Tommy Grossman bedroom scene. You did not like the choice of music as much, selecting his page on like 4chan. And we had that changed a slight bit so that it was not as like extreme or loud or like really...
I remember that. I do remember that bit in the Tommy scene of like Chapman, the close up of Chapman, when we're like, we like the music cutting off there, and he's like, it's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna make that change. And it was like, at the time that kind of stuff is like, oh, that's so frustrating. And I don't even know if I still agree with it now, but I do think that the fact that there is somebody else's kind of personal stamp on it at least makes it interesting. I don't know, maybe other people think that choice was the right one and he ends up being correct. So like, also there's a fart hidden in there, isn't there?
There were going to be about 4 or 5, and we were convinced to remove at least 4 of them.
I know there's one still in there, and I think it's when he sits down in production control and he's with like saying they fucked up my graphics. I have never like heard it in the final like mix of the movie, but I've been told it's there.
I think if I had to do this again, I would. It's one thing to research the sound, it's another to now understand and come from an angle in which you know how to do it. Like, this is still a full feature film, even if it's our own creation. And understanding that, knowing the process, or at least knowing the beginning of the process, helps me really piece together what makes a film sound good.
All right, guys, thank you for coming here for this nice interview. I very appreciate you guys coming out here. I did not forcefully take you out here. You guys came here on your own volition. The first shoot, like the first thing you ever shot for this movie, did anything bad happen during that first shoot?
I wasn't there. I can't say anything. And my lawyer has instructed me not to repeat what I have heard.
It was... Let's move on.
You got a nice budget here for Chapman. Nice, meaty, not a big one, but, you know, decent-sized budget for a small film. Were there any snacks, and where were the snacks located?
Oh, well, I mean,
I don't remember what we did.
We did pull out we did our entire sandwich making catering, which included soda, in Master Control in NESCOM.
Oh, right. And if the the Great Flood of NESCOM didn't destroy that equipment, then I think spilled soda would have been fine.
One of the most memorable scenes I was here for was the presidential scene, the president between Chapman and the president. Very, very iconic. Very much a very empowering scene. Anyway, what was one of the 2 liters I got for you for that pizza that you got?
Oh, you got a Sprite Zero Sugar.
I sure did. Oh, my man, he knows.
How the fuck do you guys remember this?
The film features many like actors that originate here from Maine. It's a very much a Maine home groove film. Anyway, out of all of the actors, which one was the hottest?
Max Ader. That's not even a question.
I'm gonna go with Cody Curtis, actually. That man is ripped.
He did get shirtless for us.
So,
he did.
So the answer you're saying is wrong because it's me. I'm the hottest person in that film. I'm the hottest person. Knowing all the things that happen in the movie, is one of you from the future? And if so, do I ever lose my virginity?
No, you never lose your virginity. I'll answer that. Because I stole it. It's mine.
So you are claiming you're allegedly from the future.
That's a fucking crazy implication. Hold on. I really, really, really hate being right.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually Dan that texted me one morning saying, hey, you know that Liberation Day thing you talked about? Yeah, Trump just said that in a speech. He's trying to make January 6th Liberation Day. I was like,
Are you fucking
great.
kidding me?
Yeah, he was trying to make it an unofficial holiday.
Is Donald Trump ripping off fucking Chapman Speaks?
What was your latest time staying up shooting?
Was it 4 or 6?
We stopped shooting at 2:30, but we went to bed at 4:30.
Yep, and I got up, 8? Because I had to drive Alex home, and you had to go to work.
Wait, there's 2 days. There was the news station day, the TV studio, which we stayed up till 2:30, but we cleaned up because there was an open house the next day. But the bright side of that is we live right across the street, so we went to bed around 4 that day. But then there was the day at Jason's in Augusta.
God.
That was a 3 a.m. and we didn't get back to Bangor until 4. I don't think I went to bed until 5.
So obviously the first thing that happened, you got acquainted to a new style of life, where we all moved in, all 5 of us from this channel moved in and lived in an apartment all together. So, about how many gallons of soda have we drank in between the 5 of us?
Oh God, it's like that scene in My Food Addiction when they open the truck and all the freaking bags of salt come out. This is how much salt you've consumed in a year. Yeah, that will be us with like dumpsters of just cans.
You went to that building in NESCOM and you edited that movie all summer as well as working, but you spent that summer editing that film and cutting down all that major parts. So one might say that that place became a second home to you. Do you remember the flood of 23?
Oh yeah, we remember the flood of 23.
Because we didn't live that far off campus. I walked all the way to campus to finish editing a project that was due tomorrow that I really hadn't done much work on. And I brought a blanket with me because I was prepared to sleep on the floor of NESCOM that night. And then I just saw a fire truck outside. I was literally on the phone with Lilia, and I was like, I'm going to have to call you back.
Sometimes, you'd get home late from editing because you have so much schoolwork you needed to do and all that. So sometimes when someone came in, they wanted to know if other people were awake or were just had their free time. So what was our mating call?
I refused to make the mating call.
We don't really know the true origins of Chapman. So what would you say are, let's say, the top 3 major influences for Chapman?
Not fucking J.D. Vance. I didn't even know who he was when we were writing Chapman. I'm sick of people comparing
He looks like a
them.
baby.
Yeah. For me, it was Tucker Carlson and a little bit of Rachel Maddow, but mostly Tucker Carlson.
Mostly Tucker Carlson and a bit of Steven Crowder.
Oh yeah, true. He's a little Ben Shapiro-y too.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
We have a nice traditionalist people who, who like to have families and, have children. So my question is, why does Chapman have no bitches?
You know the answer to that. You know the answer to that, Corwin.
Ryan C. Smith and I, co-director Ryan C. Smith and I, shook hands and agreed that Chapman Speaks is canonically bisexual. And we also got Max Ada to agree on that. So while it is not in any official material and it has no bearing on the story, we agreed that in our minds, Chapman is queer.
Were you planning on traveling down anywhere for any film festivals, or were you thinking, I want to stay in this one place and just try to go around this area?
We applied to places all over the country and all over the world. It actually never came to... It was never a thought that we would ever actually travel across states to attend one of them. But because we were accepted into quite a few, but I was a very spur of the moment thing when we ended up deciding to go down.
Go down? What did we go down on?
We went downtown. I obviously was there also, where we went down to a little spot in Maryland, and we went to a film festival, the North Beach Film Festival. And, we went there, we had a good time, we got to see other films. It was very much an overall great time. But the most important question here is, who will always be the best with meat? Who will always cook the best with meat? Steak?
Oh, do you want us to do you want us to give you a little plaque that says Joey makes really good steak? Is that what you want?
You do.
I'm the best at handling meat, and no one can say otherwise. All said and done, you got this movie released on November 1st, 2024. So, with a few days before the election, it's probably going to get a limited audience. But here's the real question. How many people do you think you swayed to vote Jill Stein?
There's a quote at the ending of the movie that says, "Your vote is all you have, use it wisely." Now, of course, I intended that to have a certain meaning, but it can really mean whatever the hell you want. So there you go. Maybe it swayed somebody in some security of their vote or something like that. I don't know.
Where can they find a scalp price for the physical copy of Chapman Speaks?
Give me $20 in hard cash, and you can have one of the extras I have.
The physical store, yes. Down in Bangor, the Emporium, Spooky. I think it's is it Spooky Goods? I think is the name of it. It's run by Katie and Nick, who play Maya and the president in the film. And it's a cute little like horror, but also just kind of more general, kind of nerdy pop culture shop in Bangor. Really cute little touristy place. They sell a lot of Blu-rays and DVDs, and among those Blu-rays are a couple copies, or DVDs and Blu-rays are a couple copies of our movie. Okay, this is going to be a special section of this episode. We're introducing not really our new cast member, but kind of on camera, Mr. Alex Gould. And I think if we're going to do episodes in the future, it's going to be a bit of a different role. We're going to have Alex talk with Corwin and myself in a little just kind of an interview-ish discussion just about what it was like being on set, because Alex was there for, I think, every single shoot, maybe minus like one or something like that, but I think it was every single shoot.
For, like, my experience with you guys, you've always been impressive with your drive for filmmaking. Because the first time I noticed that was when I discovered your show that you guys were working on, and then hearing about a little rumor that you guys were making a film got me interested. I volunteered my services pretty much on since day one.
I mean, obviously, when you're not in the position of directing or leading a project, I definitely feel like there's probably a bit of a feeling of like, oh, the people that are running this know what they're doing and they're gonna, they'll be able to guide this. But I mean, I remember for me at the very beginning, it felt like, especially with those mockumentary days, it hadn't quite felt real yet. It just kind of felt like we were still fucking around and like, maybe we shoot all these little short things and they come out like crap and the film falls apart.
I honestly did not think that it would last like the whole production. And after I read the script, I thought that this is way too ambitious, but I know it's going to be a lot of fun, so I'm going to stick with it until it ends. That was the mindset that I went into pretty much every day. If it all goes to shit, then what we have so far would be a really good for concept material. Like, as soon as we had more and more people getting involved with the project, the more attainable it became that this movie might actually be finished.
I think, Ryan, you and I were kind of thinking that we were going to do the mockumentary first as like if nothing else works out, at least we'll have this done. So it's really funny you bring that up, because I do... That thought has been brought back into my head.
The first crumb of, let's say, evolution of this project was on the very first day of the actual script, with Chapman in the Oval Office, because that was obviously that was the first shoot day with Max Ader and Nick Iamateo.
I think it was just Tina, you, me, Alex, Joey was there, Dan I think showed up, and obviously the actors.
I think as it started going on, and as it just kept going, I think more and more people were like, oh, they're still doing this. Like, this hasn't fallen apart yet. Maybe I should join. And then it was like, well, have you been on a set day yet? And I think almost every single video student was on set for at least one of those days.
And we made sure everyone was credited. So everyone who helped out was credited. And we basically, because it was so touch and go, one day someone would be doing production sound. One day someone would be a grips. One day someone would be a dolly grip. One day we had people being production assistants.
The very first day that I was convinced that there was no way that we were going to stop was during Freddie Freeman's scene. During that shoot was the day that I knew in my mind there was no stopping this production. And we were going to finish this movie no matter what, because there's no way we could just end the production now.
But I was actually going to ask Alex, I was thinking, I wanted you to say, like, what was your worst experience on set and what was your best experience on set?
Honestly, the best experience I think I might have had, there's probably multiple that I can list off. The first one was probably the dinner scene, just because of the whole morale of everybody that was there, and the attitude. All the scenes of Chapman's monologues were really fun to just sit there and experience Max deliver his lines in the most bombastic way you could ever imagine. And I remember the moments in between shots very vividly. Really, for lack of better word, inspiring for someone getting into the film industry, and also just really, really, like, batshit insane.
I feel like as like the directors and cinematographers, like I feel like we have such like tunnel vision when we're on set that like we don't notice a lot of stuff like that. Like there aren't days that I could look back and tell you that the morale was great or shit like that. I don't like, my brain has discarded all that. Most of the people were just standing around the whole time and not like looking at shot lists and directing actors and stuff.
You and I are so in tune with our creative vision, and especially by like, you know, it's not Chapman, but by the time we were doing workshop where I was the DP and you were the director, we knew how to work with each other so well that sometimes we would get that tunnel vision and ignore what was happening. I think usually not to a detriment, but sometimes to a detriment where like people were probably, I have to imagine people kind of watch us be like rolling their eyes at times.
That'll be an interesting question I guess I could ask you, Alex. I mean, especially as like at that point you were graduated for like, you know, most of our production. Did you see any like growth or change in Corwin and I as the production went on? Because I mean I don't want to count the reshoots and all that garbage, but I mean for the core shooting, which took place from like February to May or June or whatever, like did you notice any changes or any growth or any ways that the set or working on the set improved or anything, or was it all a disaster?
You guys today are very different people than when you started. Ryan, your case was you got more and more accepting to change. Like when things didn't go your way. You got you had a really hard time in the beginning accepting that things weren't going the way that you had laid out, and Corwin, you kind of had that same problem, but in a different aspects. Especially when it came down to very specific shots that you wanted it to get. As the production evolved, your growth in particular was holding on to basically the structure of the production, and you were pretty much panicking all the time about scheduling.
Kind of what really appealed to me about filmmaking in the first place is a sort of sandbox thing. I really like to experiment on set. And part of that is a little bit of coping with my inability to plan things at times. And part of that is I just do create better when I have space to try things out. And, you know, that burned us in some areas. I think partially why we're able to work well as a team is that in a lot of ways I'll let you kind of create the plan and I will build onto it where I need to, and I'll suggest changes. You'll almost not over plan, but you'll get so stuck in your plan, you're like, I want to stick to the plan. Where like I will suggest something or someone will suggest something, you're like, no, we're going to do it the way I want to do it. And then afterwards, or like we'll try, and you're like, okay, we'll try it the other way. Or like a week later, you're like, yeah, we should have tried it that way.
Pretty much at the point that I started getting involved, I was at the point where I was almost giving up on the idea of filmmaking, because I had been kind of driven into so many classes that were teaching topics that were very far removed from film. And it was all like live stuff. So the dream of being involved in film was kind of absent until you guys showed up, and until I had started working on Chapman Speaks. It was almost like I found a little piece of magic again.
So that is our discussion on our own movie. So I think we're going to end with how we always end, which is a lesson that you learned. For me, my lesson that I learned was directing, more specifically, making sure your actors have something to physically do and to actually move within a space during a scene, especially a scene that has a lot of dialogue. Just because it makes it more, not only does it make it easier for the actors, but it just makes the film more engaging. It makes the scenes more dynamic. It uses the space better. It's just There's so many moments in our movie where it's just people standing in the same place talking, and it's just it's not it.
To me, it's don't rely on exposition. Don't overexposit. I think where this movie is weak, it's weak because we are just trying to have someone talk to the audience, basically. And that's not why movies are interesting to watch. If you're going to give exposition, maybe do a montage. Better yet, find a way to naturally provide it through the story. And I know firsthand now how bad exposition, I won't say can ruin a movie, but can hurt a movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That is it for our film. We figured we should come back to the channel and talk about it, because why not? We spent all this time on it. And I guess that's really it for now. What's going to happen in the future? Well, the future is uncertain. It's up in the air. So any closing remarks you want to make?
No, I mean, it's great to be able to do this again, especially since it's been almost a year now since we've been out of college. We did graduate, we survived, and we're now working in, we both got jobs kind of in our industry, sort of, for the time being. We're making our way in this shithole economy. But, we do have some more stuff planned down the line. I won't go into details yet, just because, trying to coordinate between 4 to 5 people across states is a little hard, but this is not the end of Overtly Critical. This is a new beginning.
Make sure to watch our movie because it is free on YouTube and Vimeo. Other than that, we'll see you in the next time, whenever the hell that is.
Bye-bye.
You've done this show for 3 seasons, and then you've gone and made a movie. So 3 seasons in a movie, I think that's a pretty good resume, but everyone's clamoring, where is season 4 of Overtly Critical? Will I be hired again?
Well,
Will I get paid 2 peanuts an hour?
You can take this scoop home with you, okay? When we do return for Overtly Critical Season 4, we are going to be revisiting a franchise that we have already reviewed before in Season 1.
Oh my goodness! This is the scoop I've been waiting for! Yeah!